You can always sell your footage very cheap or even give it away. But if you want to be considered by TV production companies or marketing agencies, your footage needs to be in a different league. It's not as hard as it sounds. It's just about filling a demand and then removing all the obstacles, making it easy for the companies to work with your footage. Welcome to another video. I'm Henrik Olsen and it's so good to see all of you out there. Keep your colors neutral, so no hanky-panky with the footage, as the colors needs to be as natural as possible. Don't add any fillers that will change the color or look of the footage, as the client probably have fully capable editors that will do the color grading themselves. And there's really no way that you can predict what the footage is going to be used for. The same goes for the white balance. Make sure to pick a white balance that matches the flying conditions. So if it's sunny, then pick sunny. If it's cloudy, then pick cloudy. Or you can even go as far as setting a custom temperature. Do under no circumstances put the white balance in auto, as this can change the white balance during your recordings. The customer is most likely to want footage that is within the Rec 709 color space. That will make it fairly easy for them to match your footage against footage from other sources. Record your footage as flat as possible by using color profiles like D-Cinelike or D-Log-M. And record in 10-bit if your drone is capable of doing that. At 10-bit, the client will have a lot more flexibility when color grading the footage, and you will avoid the typical banding issues that you see with 8-bit footage. Banding issues occur when you push your sliders too far and the colors in the image starts to fall apart. Record your footage in 4K 30 FPS. You could decide to go for 24 FPS, but with 30 FPS you can just slow that one down to 80% and then you will have 24 FPS. If you are in Europe, the safe choice would be to go for 24 FPS. You can use the auto setting, but I really don't recommend that. You should use manual because you want full control of your camera settings in case the light conditions are changing. This could easily happen on a partly cloudy day, or if you, for instance, film the dark side or the shadow side of a mountain and moving into the bright side. I rarely use auto as I want a consistent look across each individual clips from a single location. It's paramount that your footage looks smooth. Jerky and choppy footage is a big no-go and looks really unprofessional. You can do this by reducing your shutter speed to the double of the frame rate, and in this case it would be 1/50 or 1/60 depending on the current frame rate that you're shooting. This will introduce motion blur and ensure buttery smooth footage in situations where you have a lot of motion or flying close to objects, which is also another kind of motion. In bright conditions, you are forced to use ND or neutral density fillers to close out enough light to be able to reduce your shutter speed to the double of the frame rate. There are plenty of videos here on the channel showing you how these ND fillers are applied to the different DJI models. I'm getting the best result by simply just sticking to the fillers without polarization. You can cut down reflection from surfaces or increase the saturation in your footage if you decide to use polarization. But this is really not needed, and it could have the opposite effect if this is not what your client is looking for. As an example, adding in reflective surfaces in post is really difficult and might ruin the shot. Keep your ISO settings as low as possible to prevent digital noise from being introduced in your footage seen as grain. An ISO value of 100 is preferred, as this keeps the noise at a minimum. In dark environments you can be forced to go higher, but try to keep the value as low as possible while still keeping your exposure. Make sure that your footage is not overexposed or have areas with blown out highlights. You can't sell footage that is not correctly exposed, as information might have been lost and can't be recovered in post. If you need to due to certain light condition in your image, then expose for the brightest area, leaving your general footage underexposed. This is still something that an editor can work with. In general, try and plan your shots. Don't overcomplicate it by introducing all sorts of movements. Keep away from jerky footage, at least in the parts that you're planning to use. Don't pan the camera by turning the drone around its own axis. This looks 100% crappy and rarely leads to sellable footage. Make sure to move slowly, unless you plan to sell your clips for an action movie where they won't likely fit anyway. You should try to keep your motion slow and steady by using flight modes like cinematic or tripod mode. Or you could even go as far as applying a custom S-curve to the expo settings to get the stick response that you want, which is something I covered in this video. Flying your drone for capturing cinematic footage, that could occupy a whole video by itself. So if you're interested in that, then simply write cinematic in the comment below. Repeat your shots a few times. You would appreciate to have a few to choose from when selecting the best. You probably already by now figured out that it requires a pro-level drone for this kind of job. Your video simply needs to be a certain standard for it to sell consistently at a high price. You probably need a Mavic 2 or Phantom 4 class drone, as drones like the Mavic Mini, Spark and Mavic Air is not enough if you want to sell your footage for top dollar. I have sold footage from my Mavic Air, but I've also been turned down multiple times by production companies once they learned what kind of drone that I was flying. So when it's time to render the final video for your client and the result is still choppy and jerky, what do you do? I actually made a video about that, showing you how to fix laggy footage in post-production. And you can access this video through this card. Or you could go for the YouTube recommended through this card. I hope you liked this video. If you did, then feel free to give it a like. If you didn't like it, feel free to press the dislike button twice. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you around.